Hey y'all, my name is Prashant Kumar, or PK, and I'm an MCAT tutor at Shemasian Academic Consulting. Today, we're going to be doing a passage walkthrough in the MCAT Psych-Soc section. You should be taking roughly 5 minutes on this passage, but I've added one more bonus question at the end. So today we're going to be going more in depth so you can see exactly what's going on in my head as I tackle this section. Let's get it. Alright, great. So I've gone ahead and put the passage on the left and the questions we're going through on the right. So feel free to take a moment, pause the video, and come back to us. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on the passage so we have a better read. So there's the passage. Feel free to pause there. And then here are the questions. Great. So right away, let's get right into talking strategy. For me, I like to maintain the same exact strategy regardless of what passage I'm working on. The reason for this is I like to have something to come back to. It kind of boosts my confidence when I know my game plan going into test day, and I'm able to repeat that over and over and over for any type of passage. For me, the strategy looks like read the paragraph, write a quick 3 to 5 word summary, then go on to the next paragraph, and on and on and on. Doing so provides a little mental check-in with me. After the paragraph, I need to understand what's going on a big picture level, not really the detail level, but a big picture level. And I need to be able to summarize that. And once I do that, I can say, I know this passage, and I can go on to the next paragraph. Oftentimes I find myself reading through an entire passage and then not understanding something halfway through, and then that ruining the rest of the passage. And I have to reread the entire passage again. So doing this, if we don't understand a paragraph, we can go back and reread it and make sure that we understand it before we come back to the entire passage. And that saves a bunch of time. But with that, let's talk our first paragraph. Researchers have discovered that childhood exposure to secondhand smoke can have detrimental effects on child's health and development. Studies have shown that secondhand smoke can 1. Increase adulthood incidence of asthma, 2. Decrease dopamine levels during adolescence, 3. Affect cognitive processes like decision making, and 4. Increase adulthood incidence of cancer. All right, so right away, I always ask myself one question: what's happening? What's going on? And so this big picture question doesn't really rely on details, but what is the summary or the thesis of this paragraph? And so here I'm gonna write secondhand smoke for effects, right? And remember, I'm not gonna write out all 4 effects. This is sort of a roadmap. If I need to come back to the passage or the paragraph, I will come back to the specific spot by using my table of contents. And so we can go right on to the next paragraph now. To study the effect of secondhand smoke during childhood on adult health outcomes, researchers conducted a longitudinal study tracking 938 individuals who lived in homes from ages 0 through 10 with guardians who smoked at least 1 pack a day of cigarettes. As a control, researchers also recruited 912 individuals who lived in homes from ages 0 to 10 with guardians who did not smoke any cigarettes. Beginning at the age of 15 through the age of 60, the researchers sent a survey to the study participants to assess any physical or mental health conditions that the participants had, such as asthma, hypertension, diabetes, schizophrenia, depression, anger issues, or cancer. All right, so the question we ask again, what's happening? And so here we have some sort of longitudinal study. So I always write a S to indicate study. And so here we have guardians smoking versus guardians no smoke, okay? So I'm just gonna write no smoke, okay? And so who are we looking at though? We're looking at individuals who lived 0 through 10, okay? And then 0 to 10 years old. Okay, so this is what we're looking at. We're looking at sort of an experimental design of 0 to 10-year-olds smoking versus non-smoking, and then the outcomes. I guess you could write outcomes right here. But something simple. Remember, the only person that's reading this is going to be you. So feel free to use symbols, abbreviations, whatever you want to make it as seamless as possible to understand and as quickly as possible to write down. And so with that, we'll go on to the next paragraph. In the group that experienced secondhand smoke, researchers found a higher incidence of all 7 physical and mental health conditions. The greatest difference between the 2 groups was found in the incidence of asthma. 54% of the individuals in the group that experienced secondhand smoke developed some form of asthma by the age of 60 compared to the 23% of the control group individuals. Researchers also found that individuals in the secondhand smoke condition developed schizophrenia by the age of 60 at a higher percentage than control group individuals. All right, so here, what's happening? We have our same thing, our quick summary, outcome, and then we're gonna have asthma and schizophrenia. So I'll just write it like secondary, asthma plus schiz greater. Okay, so however you want to write it, just indicating that these two sort of outcomes are increased in the secondary smoke conditions. All right, final paragraph. In a follow-up investigation, researchers decided to broaden the scope of the study to analyze socioeconomic factors. Using average household income and neighborhood public school funding as a proxy for SES, researchers found that low SES individuals had poorer health outcomes irrespective of secondhand smoke during childhood. All right, so exactly what's happening here, we're going to write a quick summary about SES, impact health outcomes. Okay, and so we can come back to that paragraph if a question asks about socioeconomic factors or socioeconomic status. But for now, we have done it. We have written our summary. We have a good understanding of the entire structure of this passage, and we can go right into question number 1. A researcher points out that there is a difference in the size of the secondhand smoke group and the control group, which would invalidate the results of the study. This concern is A, valid because the sample size must be equal in order to achieve statistical significance, B, valid because these unequal sample sizes will produce bias, C, invalid because a difference of 26 individuals for 2 large sample sizes will not be significant, D, invalid because statistical significance is not based on sample size. All right, so right away, we have a question that's asking about validity versus invalidity. So valid means, does the experiment actually test and qualify or quantify exactly what we want it to? Does this, whatever significant difference is it a valid significant differences based on our experimental setup? Does it actually work? And so here, they're talking about the difference in the size, right, of the secondhand smoke. So let's go back to our experimental setup and see the difference of the size. So here, where's our experimental setup? We start talking about it in the second paragraph, right? That's why I have the S right there. So it says there's 938 individuals who smoked and then 912 individuals who did not smoke. So we're looking at a difference of 938 versus 912. Okay, so right away, I want you to think of any experiments you've read about or seen in a study or journal, whatever. Usually, these types of numbers, 900, thousands, right? These are large sample sizes. So we're not always going to be too concerned with any small differences in number, right? 938 is pretty close to 912. So right away, we're thinking, oh, yeah, you're never going to have a perfectly equal number of patients in a longitudinal study, right? The groups might vary a little bit, whether if based on the experimental setup, attrition, whatever, right? So 938 versus 912, we have a large enough sample size and the difference is small enough, right? Now, let's imagine if this was like 50 versus 10, right? Now we have a much smaller sample size, and the difference is like roughly 40. But this is an incredibly stronger difference compared to the 938 versus 912, right? 40 in comparison to 10 and 50 versus 912 and 938, right? You can see that proportion of difference to like what the sample size is matters, right? And so in this case, we'd say this is invalid, but this is valid. And that's kind of just a judgment call type thing. And as you get more and more comfortable with experimental designs, you should be able to help make this judgment call. All right, so right away, I'm thinking that we can eliminate answer choice A, right? Because we know sample sizes don't have to be equal, right, for a statistical significance. We've seen studies where you will have different numbers of samples, so we can eliminate that. B, valid because the unequal sample size will produce bias. We can eliminate that as well because we said we have a large enough sample size and the differences are so small comparatively that if any bias is produced, it will be such a small margin. that it will not affect it. So C, invalid, because a difference of 26 individuals for two large sample sizes will not be significant, right? This is making sense, right? This is exactly what we said. We have 26 individuals that are different, but the sample sizes are so large that we don't have to worry about it. So C is looking like a pretty good answer, so we'll mark that off. And then D, invalid, because statistical significance is not based on sample size. This is also not true. The statistical significance is based on sample size. If you've heard of anything called a power analysis or effect size, these are statistical terms that you don't really need to understand in depth for the MCAT, but are very, very important in determining the level of statistical significance. And so we can eliminate D, even though it is invalid, the sort of concern, the justification is wrong. So we can stick with C as our answer choice, and we're on to question number 2. All right. Question number 2. Which of the following most likely explains the increased incidence of schizophrenia in the secondhand smoke group? Is it A, the dopamine hypothesis, B, the serotonin hypothesis, C, the acetylcholine hypothesis, or D, the epinephrine hypothesis? All right, so right away we need to ask ourselves, what is associated with schizophrenia? What neurotransmitter is associated with it? And right away we should think, from our content review phase, schizophrenia is associated with dopamine levels. So a dopamine imbalance caused by increased dopamine levels in the brain is often associated with increases of schizophrenia incidence. And so right away, based on this fact, we can pick A as our answer. But let's go through the other 3. So epinephrine and acetylcholine are not usually talked about as a hypothesis of any disease. But serotonin is the serotonin hypothesis of depression, right? When we have decreased levels of serotonin, we're going to have increased levels of depression prevalence. And so we can eliminate B, since serotonin is talking about depression. In this case, we're talking about schizophrenia, right? And so these are 2 very, very important hypotheses that are dealing with mental illness, but just have an understanding that schizophrenia is associated with dopamine and depression is associated with serotonin. And right away, we can go on to question number 3. All right. In a new study, researchers discovered that individuals with low SES experience worse health outcomes than individuals with high SES. This result is explained by which of the following? Is it A, gender equality, B, food deserts, C, socioeconomic gradient of health, or D, epidemiology? All right, so right away we can understand what we're looking for, right? Low SES experience versus individuals with high SES, and what is explaining this, right? And so right away we have good answer choices of words that we'll see over and over again on the MCAT psych-soc section, right? My one piece of advice is to always understand every single term that comes up in the answer choices, even if it's not the right answer choice, especially on psych-soc, because they pull from a pool of terms that you need to have a mastery of. So let's go one by one through these terms. Gender inequality is differences associated with success or ability to thrive, ability to earn, associated with gender. So this is basically gendered differences in work, life, etc. harming. Okay, food deserts are when you're in an area without an adequate supply of healthy, fresh food. And so this is a term that you'll see over and over again, especially as we relate to obesity rates, right? Obesity rates are higher in areas of food deserts. So food deserts are areas without access to healthy foods, grocery stores / produce, right? So all of these are indicative of food deserts. C, socioeconomic gradient of health. This is the combined differences of socioeconomics affecting health. So differences in health associated with SES, right? So as we decrease our sort of income or money or socioeconomic class, our health is also going to decrease, right? So decreased SES results in decreased health. And then epidemiology, the study of disease, the study of human disease and how it spreads, right? And so right away, having this understanding is very, very important of all these terms, right? And so in this case, we're looking at SES, experience, worse health outcomes compared to high SES, right? And so what's going to explain that? That is C. The socioeconomic gradient of health is going to be what defines exactly this, right? Increased health outcomes are associated with higher wealth, higher social class, higher access to hospitals, whereas lower health outcomes are associated with lower socioeconomic class. And so with that, we've knocked out the 3 questions for this psychosocial passage. But I have a bonus question, since it's only 3, for a standalone question, okay? Researchers find that elderly individuals are slower at solving logic puzzles compared to young adults. Which type of intelligence do elderly individuals have less of? Is it A, crystal, B, fluid, C, unrealized, or D, hidden? So this is another thing, right? We want to understand the terms, like I said in the previous question, even if it's not the right answer choice. So crystallized intelligence is what I call wisdom, right? It's that knowledge that you build up over time. You sort of have it built up, like facts, information, facts, info, right? It's like the cold, hard wisdom or thought, brain power that we think of, whether we can memorize things or whether we have a lot of information in our head. Fluid intelligence is kind of like the more adaptive, right? We think fluid is moving. Fluid intelligence is the adaptive thinking, whether we can solve problems. I like to think of this as the ability to solve a Rubik's Cube, kind of. Like, sure, you might have a basic understanding of how to do it, but you'll have different positions where you need to adapt and think and all of that, right? So you got to be able to go with the flow and think. So this is an adaptive thinking sort of intelligence. And unrealized and hidden intelligence aren't even terms that we know. They're not associated with any type of intelligence that we've studied, so we can eliminate C and D. So now the question is asking, which type of intelligence do elderly people have less of? So elderly, less, okay? So the understanding is that elderly people will have a greater amount of wisdom, right? They'll have more information in their head, they'll have more facts, all of that, but they'll be less able to solve these problems that require adaptive thinking or able to think on the spot or think on the move, right? And so they will have less of fluid intelligence, right? Elderly people are not going to be able to think on the spot as well as a younger person. And so with that, we have knocked out 4 questions. Great work, team. Crushed it. All right, great work, team. We crushed another psychosocial passage. Kudos for you for getting it done. A lot of great information, from statistical tests to the hypotheses of depression and schizophrenia to types of intelligence. So great job getting it done. If you like this video, give us a like down below and subscribe to our channel, and comment exactly what types of walkthroughs and information you want to see next. Additionally, check out our 528 strategy series from Vikram, some super helpful tips and tricks to help extend this knowledge that we practiced today. And finally, click the link in our bio to sign up for our practice question of the day so you don't miss out on any test prep before test day. Happy studying, and let's get it.